Hey everyone, I'm Anthony Joki. He's Jackson McCurry. Welcome to the Dawgland podcast. It's good to talk to everybody again. It has been a minute since we have been able to sit down and talk to everybody, to all of you. I unfortunately have been going through some health issues, and it's been a minute since me and Jackson have been able to sit down and talk some Browns football. But we wanted to get in here and talk about the Browns season, which starts this Sunday. So we are going to give you a season preview of what we think is going to be the outlook for the Browns this season, as well as give you a game preview between the Browns and the Bengals as they square off in first energy. Wow, see, I'm really out of practice. Huntington Bank Field, downtown Cleveland on Sunday. So, uh, good to see y'all, Jackson. How you doing, man?
Doing great, man. It's good to see you. Good to hear from you. I know what you have been dealing with the past month, but it's nice to finally be able to sit down here, get back into the swing of things, talk some Browns football, and it's a perfect time with the season getting ready to kick off tonight, as for the NFL, but especially for the Browns this coming Sunday.
Yeah, the NFL does kick off tonight. We got a great game with Dallas visiting the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. That should be a wonderful game. So we're looking forward to having NFL football being back. We had a great college weekend this past weekend with Ohio State, Texas, Miami, Notre Dame, LSU, Clemson. There's a lot of great football this past weekend. We kind of had our appetite ramp up a little bit for real football coming up here. So it's a very exciting time, and we wanted to get in here, talk about what we think is going to happen with this Browns season this year. So Jack, with all the things that have gone on this offseason, the revamped quarterback room, new offensive coordinator, all these things that have gone on, the goal of the 2025 Cleveland Browns should be what?
Getting the offense in the right direction, because what we saw last year, Anthony, and this could go back a couple seasons, I think, if you want to look at it that way, but most specifically last season, the offense, we could say cratered, but I don't even want to know if we could say it went that far, although it was the worst ranked offense in the National Football League last year, only averaging 15 points a game. I think it's getting the offense on track. And of course, it starts with the quarterback position, and that might not be solved this year. I think that's safe to say that might take a multi-year process, which I know Browns fans really don't like hearing about multi-year rebuilds, retoolings, whatever you want to call it. But I think the quarterback position isn't settled yet. Maybe it will be come the end of 2025. It's to be determined, obviously, but getting the running game on track, trying to fix things with the offensive line, and the skilled positions, running wide receiver, tight end, like there's potential with guys there. There's established guys there, but I think if you can get the offense starting to head into the right direction, and maybe have some sort of an answer on quarterback, I think that's probably the biggest thing for the Cleveland Browns, and what needs to be solved, I think, the most in 2025.
So do we measure the season based on wins, or do we measure this season based on the eye test? We talk about the college football playoff committee, and a lot of times, and it is, well, this team is so much better than this team because of the eye test. The score may not reflect it, but we sit there and we watch these games and we see the progress that they have. We see how good they are. Do we be measuring this Browns team by the eye test versus the win total, which I believe last I looked, what, 3.5, 4.5 in Vegas. So obviously they're not expected us to win many games this season. So how do you define the success this year for the Browns?
For me, I would say it's the eye test. I know a lot of people, and probably some people in that organization, are going to look at wins and losses. I mean, last year we went 3-13. I think if you take a step back from that, then changes are going to be in order. But you want to look and see what's happening on the football field. If this team wins 4 or 5 games, you know, I think we should focus more on the eye test because, we have a quarterback room that a lot of people say is one of the worst in the league. You have a 40-year-old in Joe Flacco. You have two mid-round rookies in Dylan Gabriel and Shador Sanders. It's going to be hard to judge them. Well, it's not going to be hard to judge them per se, based not so much Joe Flacco, but the rookies, depending on how many games they get to play. But the eye test, Anthony, I would say is seeing how guys like Isaiah Bond, Cedric Tillman, Jamari Thrash, Harold Fannin Jr., how those guys are progressing in the passing game to maybe cement their spot for the next couple years in the wide receiver room and tight end room. Seeing how the running game goes. How does Dylan Sampson develop? How does, if we ever get to see him at some point, because that's still a mystery, Quinshawn Judkins, Raheem Sanders, another rookie in that running back room. It's a very young running back room. The offensive line, that's going to be hard to judge, and that's going to tie into the running game, I think, because it's a veteran laced offensive line. You got Batonio, Posick, Teller, and Conklin, who have been in the league many years. DeJuan Jones is going to be one that you're definitely going to keep an eye on because he's the left tackle. He's moving over from the right side. How does he develop? How does he transition from being on the one side of the offensive line to the other? And does that become a spot that the Browns feel secure in for the next couple of years? So I wouldn't judge this so much on wins and losses. I know other people will, but it's just seeing how this offense develops and seeing how some of these young pieces that could be part of the next potential contending window for the Browns over the next 3 or 4 years, how do they fit into that plan?
I was trying to pull up really quickly here as you're talking your tweet that you had posted the other day about getting the running game back on track and the rankings that this team had when things were progressing a little bit here. So in 2020, ranking wise, we were third. 2021 fourth. 2022 sixth. 2023 12th. Last year we were 29th. And I think, we saw all the injuries on the offensive line last year, and that obviously I think made a big difference. And obviously, Nick Chubb being out for a little bit, he did come back towards the end of the year and then got hurt again. So that was a huge difference. Obviously, he's not here anymore. You have a pair of rookies, and like you said, if we ever see Quinshawn Judkins, but the running game here is the biggest telltale sign of how successful this offense can be. We see what Stefanski can do with the running game. We see what he does off of the running game in terms of the play action and everything he does off of it. So if this offensive line can get back to, and we heard Joe Batonio talk about one of the reasons he came back is because he feels like we are going to get back to that type of success running the football. So if they're able to do that, that makes it easier on Joe Flacco. That makes it easier on if they have to play Dylan Gabriel, Shador Sanders. That makes it easier for those guys. You know, having a running game is extremely important. Granted, we see what guys like Mahomes are able to do throwing the football, but the telltale sign of Stefanski's offense and how successful we've been to the playoffs twice with it is how they run the football. So if we're able to get to that, that will be huge in determining, all right, maybe we can get this back on track, within these next couple of years here with this running game, retooling the offensive line a little bit more while we try to find, this quarterback that we've been looking for now over a quarter of a century since this team came back in '99.
Yeah, I mean, you look last year and, I like Jerome Ford. I know a lot of people do not like Jerome Ford. I just don't think you could count on him to be the lead back. And his numbers are misleading because he's such a home run hitter at the position. He averaged 5.4 yards per carry last year. I just don't think that number is so misleading. And we've always talked about like Joe Thomas referring to run efficiency, and Jerome Ford is the example. Like he averages 5.4 yards a carry, but if you broke it down, he's not like a solid running back that can always get you 4 or 5 yards a pop. He's the guy that'll get you like 3, 4, and then he'll bust off like a 60-yard run. That's the type of running back he is. I think him being in a committee with the likes of Samson, uh, Sanders, maybe Jenkins or Judkins at some point. I think that'll make the running game a lot smoother. But I also think, and you mentioned it, going back to the scheme that got Stefanski to this position of being a head coach in the league, being one of the better play callers in the league, was the wide zone blocking, running the ball. Learning what he learned from Kubiak and what Kubiak learned from Mike Shanahan, and so on and so forth. Getting back to that and being efficient running the ball, successful running the ball, this will help the offense, I think. You go back to 2023 when Joe Flacco had his run and we went to the playoffs, the running game wasn't strong. I mean, Jerome Ford showed up in the passing game a lot, but the running game wasn't successful. It wasn't efficient. And that's why Flacco had to chuck it around 50 times a game. If we can get some semblance of a running game here in this offense, I think that's going to make it easier for Joe Flacco, and hopefully it means getting this offense to a sufficient level. I wouldn't say to an elite level, but just to a sufficient level to where we can get scoring drives, getting some momentum on that side of the ball and trying to make things easier for the defense. Because we saw it last year, Anthony. The defense showed that they were still as good as they were in 2023, but when the offense wasn't moving the ball at all, whoever was at quarterback, whether it was Watson or Winston or whoever, the when you got to play complementary football, and if the offense isn't doing anything, the defense is going to get gassed. The defense is going to look terrible. It's not going to look like the defense that we saw in 2023. But if the offense can give the defense a breather and put points on the board, it's going to make things easier for the defense to hopefully get back to what they were in 2023 under Jim Schwartz.
Yeah, that certainly would make a huge difference. And I want to talk about one more thing about the offense here. So, we mentioned the quarterback room, and obviously this has been the biggest topic in the Cleveland media and even national media all offseason and training camp. How long of a leash did Joe Flacco have to be the guy to run the offense?
See, I know earlier we said we weren't going to base it on victories, but I think the Browns will base it on victories. If we get off to a slow start and we only win like one out of the first five or two out of the first 6 or 7, I don't know how early they want to insert Dylan Gabriel or Shador Sanders, but I feel like if we get off to a rough start and Joe doesn't look like what he did in 2023 and he's turning the ball over and the offense just looks putrid, I could see a scenario like 5 or 6 games in, probably after the London game, where they would, move to one of the rookie quarterbacks, and then at that point you're in evaluation mode and you're assessing Gabriel, and maybe at some point they put Sanders in as well. You see what these guys have. Even though it's apparent they're already looking towards the 2026 class, if week 1 of the college season was any indication. But I would imagine Flacco's leash is short. He's 40 years old. So if the Browns get off to a slow start, it would not shock me with through the first quarter of the season that we see one of the rookie quarterbacks out there.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I think we should go with Joe until we know the wheels are going to fall off this thing. If we split the first 6 games, we're sitting 3-3. Obviously at that point, I'm still rolling with Joe. If we're 2-4, but all the games have been super close, and he's playing really well, still rolling that way as well. But if it's ugly, if this offense, like you said, can't move the football, if it's putrid, I would at least wait till after the Steelers game, because you mentioned the London game. That's week 5. Then they go on the road to Pittsburgh. I would wait till after that game because I would not want to start a quarterback on the road in Pittsburgh. So that's how far I would go. I would give Joe 6 games, see where you are at that point. That will give you a good idea. You're getting pretty close to the trade deadline at that point as well. I want to say it's week 9 now in the NFL. So you know, I would go until that point. And if you look at this offense and things are pretty ugly, at that point I make the change. Unless, obviously if there's an injury, you make that switch earlier, which we certainly hope there's not. But uh, I would go 6 games and evaluate after that.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think, 6 games would be fair, unless we get off to a start that no one's expecting, which would be pretty amazing. Um, if it's anything like 2023, then you just, like you said, you ride with Flacco till the wheels fall off. Um, but yeah, I think we kind of know what the situation is. They want to see the rookies at some point. Um, Gabriel will probably get the first crack, much to some of the fan base's dismay, but I think he earned that the way he played in the preseason. Um, which isn't any indication, obviously, if Brown's history tells you anything. But I think Gabriel earned it. That's obviously why they moved on from Pickett. And yeah, if things get off to a rough start, I think we will see him pretty early.
I just want to run through the first 6 games really quick because they're a doozy. Cincinnati at home, on the road against Baltimore, home against Green Bay, and their newly acquired Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
On the road at Detroit, in London against Minnesota, on the road in Pittsburgh. So,
Yep.
those first 6 games, maybe it's throwing a sacrifice and Joe Flacco out there for those first 6 games and hoping he gets you through those so you could get to one of the rookie quarterbacks after that if they want to evaluate them. But before that, that would be pretty rough if one of them had to go for that point.
Without a doubt.
All right, let's switch it over defense. We know how good this defense can be. We talked about it a little bit earlier. If this defense can constantly get off the field, that's great. We know what they are up front with Myles Garrett, their top draft pick Mason Graham, Alex as well. So I mean, you got Denzel Ward back there. Like you have a lot of good players on defense, and this defense 2 years ago was the number 1 defense in the NFL. Obviously, they were going to take a step back last year. They took a bigger step back, I think you mentioned, because the offense struggled, and they're just gassed all year long. What are your expectations for this defense, provided the offense gives them a little bit of breathing?
I mean, there's no doubt that this defense can get back to being at a top 10, maybe even a top 5 level. I do have one area of concern, which I'll get to, but I mean, when you talk about this defense, I mean, the strength is obviously up front. I mean, the depth, I'm looking at a depth chart now, and I still can't believe this is our defensive line. It's Miles, Mason Graham, Malik Collins, which no one really talks about. And I think he is going to be one of the underrated additions across the NFL just because of what he's been able to do across his career as a pass rusher, most recently with San Francisco. Alex Wright and Isaiah McGuire. Shelby Harris is still here. He's going to provide some veteran leadership. Joe Tryon Shoyinka, good acquisition. He showed some potential during camp. And then Mike Hall, who's coming back from the injury, he practiced today. So who knows if he'll play this Sunday, but at least he's ramping up for his return. And then Aiden Huntington obviously was the one of the camp darlings this year. Definitely showed some plenty of potential and promise in terms of pass rushing depth on that defensive line. Obviously, there's concerns on the back end, which we'll get to, but you got to feel good about this defense on paper, Anthony. I mean, we know what they're going to bring up front. We still got 95, who's one of the best players in the league on either side of the ball. And you know what Jim Schwartz brings as a defensive coordinator. We saw it 2 years ago. It's the reason why he won Assistant Coach of the Year. So as long as that pass rush is there, you're going to like your chances every Sunday.
Oh, most definitely. the pass rush should keep us in most games, especially these divisional games. They have, like you said, there's a lot of guys along that defensive front. We know what Jim Schwartz likes to do in terms of rotating guys in and out constantly. If you're able to keep those guys fresh for as long as possible, that's only going to further the success of this defensive line. The second level of that defense, linebacking core, certainly is going to be interesting to watch because they did draft Carson Schlesinger early in the second round. They are unfortunately missing Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah all season this year because of the injury he sustained last year. So, what do you expect from Schlesinger? Because it seems like he won the award for most outstanding player in preseason for the Browns. What do you expect from him being the rookie, being the guy out there with that green dot, going out there week one and having control of that defense pretty much?
I mean, I have loved everything I've seen from him. Even in his limited preseason action, which kind of tells you that the Browns are really high on him. The guy was all around the ball. Like wherever the ball went, Schlesinger went to go get him. Like he's a constant threat in the middle of that defense. I think there's a reason why I went ahead and made the bold claim. And I may even go put a little money down on it too for him to win defensive rookie of the year because I just think he is going to be a threat, whether it's blitzing, what he does in coverage, going after the ball carrier to make tackles. Like I think this guy is going to be a complete threat at that linebacker position, and it's a bummer that JOK is not able to play because I would have loved to seen these two in the middle of that defense just causing havoc in all three phases. I think it would have been so fun to watch. But I've got high expectations for Schlesinger. I mean, some of the media is throwing around the comp of Clay Matthews. Our Clay Matthews, not the Green Bay Clay Matthews, the one that should be in Canton in the Hall of Fame. I mean, I think that's crazy. I think some of the takes on the rookie class have been outrageous, and like there's a lot to like about this rookie class, but I don't think you want to put extreme expectations on these guys. Like, yes, it can be a franchise altering draft class, but I think you got to let the season play out before you start making takes like that. But Schlesinger looks like the complete player at linebacker. I'm anxious to see how he's going to perform starting this Sunday, but like everything there so far looks like he's going to be great. And I mean, everybody kind of talks about the linebacker room, and yes, there's concerns there. I mean, you're right now you're rolling with Diabate, Jerome Baker, Devin Bush. We're missing Winston Reed, who was our special teams ace last year. But once he comes back, like I think on paper the linebacker room should be fine. I think you got great athletes in that room. You got guys that are good tacklers, Bush and Baker, who are also vets in that room. Diabate showed promise at the end of the year. Like there's reason to be doubtful about that room, but I think they'll be fine.
And to be honest, too, like if needed, in certain situations and packages, like Delpit can line up in those areas as well. He's
And
so
Jenkins.
he's so versatile. Both of them are so versatile that they should be able to line up in those spots and help out in certain situations, especially in passing situations. They do have a good tight end that they're going up against this week that we'll talk about tomorrow. That going to be a tough task for Schlesinger to deal with. If he's asked to cover, but there are alternatives on this defense to be able to help out if necessary. So, but let's kind of transition to the secondary because we do have some concerns here. Obviously, you have Denzel Ward, you have Greg Newsome, who's on his final year of his rookie deal. They unfortunately lost Martin Emerson for the season with the Achilles injury. How do we feel about the starters of the secondary? And I know you're worried about behind that.
Yeah. I mean, it's honestly, I have some worries about some of the starters. Like, obviously, there's no worries about Denzel Ward. He's one of the best corners in the game. I feel confident about Grant Delpit. He took a slight step back last year, so hopefully he gets back on par this year. My worries are Newsome and Hickman. Newsome, he's been a good corner. I would say like average to sometimes above average. I'm anxious to see how he transitions back to the outside role. He had a shoulder injury during camp. So who knows how that's going to play? I mean, you're starting off right away against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, so this is going to tell you. Uh, so I have worries about him, the nickel position, and this goes to the depth of the cornerback room. Like Cam Mitchell hasn't shown progress. Miles Harden, it's kind of the wait and see role. He had a great joint practice against the Eagles by all reports. So you're hoping that's a guy that might take a step forward this year. And then, they signed Rayshon Jenkins and DeMonte Casey, who I think will provide some safety depth. But I have my doubts on Ronnie Hickman. Like he's shown flashes during his first couple years here, but I don't know if he's ready to be a full-time starting free safety. Maybe there's the plan to rotate him with Casey when they go, or if he's not getting the job done because Casey's a vet. He's been around the league for a while, but we've been looking for that ball hogging free safety since like Tashawn Gibson, and we're still searching for it. I don't know if Ronnie Hickman can be that guy. I hope he proves me wrong. But the secondary is where I have some pause on this defense because even though we're going to have the pass rush, like if guys can get the ball out quickly, is our secondary going to be able to make enough plays outside of Denzel Ward?
And you not only mentioned the receivers that the Bengals have in Chase and Higgins, even Oshavas as well, but the Steelers traded for DK Metcalf. The Ravens have Bateman and Flowers and DeAndre Hopkins. So I mean, there's a lot of good receivers in this division to where you play 6 games against these teams. So your secondary is going to have to be up to par and really good. You know what Denzel Ward is. I think Newsom's going to play really well, especially since he's in a contract year this year. So I think we'll be a little bit surprised with his play. And we might even get a little "I told you so" with him or from him based on the fact that he's playing outside again. So I think he's going to be like, "See, I told you I could do this," which would be great. I would if he plays really well outside. Maybe that's him and Denzel are your 2 outside guys, and you figure out the nickel situation later on. But the secondary is a big concern. I know. I do it draft next year. A lot of secondary guys, coming out to take a look at. But where it stands now, certainly is one of the bigger question marks on this team. Certainly the biggest question mark on defense, maybe second biggest question mark behind quarterback, if you really think about it. So I would throw offensive line up there as well. So you're looking at this season, question wise, quarterback, secondary, offensive. Those are my 3 things that I'm still extremely concerned about, and that certainly is going to determine where this team ultimately ends up at the end of the year. And with that, if you have a win total for this team, what you got?
Before that, I actually have a question for you because there's one group we didn't mention, and we got a new face at the kicker position. Andre, I think is I've heard so many different pronunciations.
Yeah, please don't give me a new pronunciation to try.
I want to say it's Andre Schmidt. I've heard Smite. I've heard Smith, Schmidt. I think it's Schmidt. How do you feel about him? Because he's a 27-year-old rookie. I'm pretty sure he's 27 or 28. He is a former Lou Groza winner at Syracuse, was with the UFL last year before he signed with the Browns towards the end of the season. And ultimately, we moved on from Dustin Hopkins. He's got a leg, but how do you feel about them throwing in a young, inexperienced NFL kicker onto this roster? It seems like the team was high on him. Obviously, when they announced the initial 53, they put him out to the media, which made me think they're going to roll with this guy at the start of the year and see how it goes. How do you feel about them throwing out essentially a rookie kicker with no NFL experience?
Well, I'll put it this way. with where this team is projected to be this season, if they're anywhere on the opponent's side of the field and within 4th and 5, they're probably going for it. To be completely honest with you, and if he's out there missing extra points, that means we score touchdowns, and I'm fine with that. So I mean,
Yep.
at this point, see what you got. We know the struggles that Hopkins had over last season and in preseason this year. He had a great 2023, pretty much a legendary 2023 in terms of kicking and what he was able to do. Took a major step back, obviously, last year and in preseason. Why not see what we have? Like I said, if he's out there missing extra points, that means we're scoring a lot of touchdowns. And I think that with where this team is projected, if we are, 35-yard line and in, and it's 4th and 3, 4th and 4, I would say we're probably going just to see what we can do.
Yeah, I mean that's always been in Stefanski's
Unless
nature.
unless it's like a close game and you need a field goal, but other than that, I think that we'll be aggressive in that, like we have been.
Yeah, it's always been in Stefanski's nature to be aggressive. I will say, I'm just going to throw numbers out there. He was 81% kicker at Syracuse after his successful freshman year when he went 30 of 34. His numbers dipped every year until his senior year. They went down as far as 64.3%. It went back up to 76.9 his senior season. And then he went 19 to 21 in the UFL, which obviously the UFL is a different ball game, not as big of crowds. But we'll see how he goes. I mean, obviously, I think we're at the point now, Anthony, because I think we've been coveting a kicker like Phil Dawson, which I don't think we're ever going to have again, just because the kicking game is such a mentally breaking position. Like, if this doesn't work out, I'm sure they'll just line up another kicker to bring in. But I think that kind of proves the point now that the Browns shouldn't draft kickers and shouldn't pay kickers because it just has not worked out since Phil Dawson.
Unless you have somebody like Phil and you pay that kind of
Right. Right.
But
But I
yeah,
think we're at the
I'm
point
not
now.
drafting a kicker for sure.
No, because we spent like 3 draft picks in a 5-year period on a kicker, and none of them panned out here. They all went somewhere else and panned out. So that just kind of tells you all you need to know, except Kane
Well,
York. That's
and who knows? Maybe once the dome gets built, maybe things are a little bit easier in terms of kicking. You know,
yeah.
Obviously kicking in that stadium is not an easy task. So maybe down the road things will get. All right,
Yep.
what you got win total wise for me?
Well, I think we did this back in May when we played the schedule game. Um, I don't remember what I got to go back and listen to what we had, but I have stuck with 4-13 for a while now, and I'm not going to change it. Plus, I also have a bet that I said they were going to win 4 or less games, so I will stick with that bet. Shout out to my coworker Nick. I'll probably pay you a Browns hat. I will get you a Browns hat because honestly, Anthony, like you try to be positive about a lot of things, but the way the season's going to start with that schedule doesn't look promising. Outside of this coming weekend, which I'm spoiling our game preview episode, obviously. I just don't see a lot of wins starting out. I think it's going to be a rough start to the season, and then the second half, maybe we rally off some wins. Maybe with one of the rookie quarterbacks to give the fan base some hope. Hopefully, some of this offensive talent, the young talent that we've drafted, shows some promise, and that leads to Jimmy sticking with Andrew and Kevin because hopefully the rookies show that they can add talent to this team. But I'm going to stick with my season projection of 4-13, and hopefully that means we're one of the top 5 picks in the draft, and then maybe Jacksonville is right around that window as well. Because if we have all this young talent, they are as good as they've been advertised and we have 2 top 5 picks next year or 2 top 10 picks, I think that means the franchise will be able to keep on their ascension back into a contention window.
Yeah, I mean it's tough to put a win total on this thing. I can see 3 wins. I can see 4 wins. I don't see more than 6. I think that would be the absolute cap of where this team, and that would take winning a couple games where like, oh wow, they won that one. I'm thoroughly surprised, and somehow how we pull off those division games. Maybe one against Baltimore. I'm sure we'll maybe split with Pittsburgh. Probably get one against Cincinnati at some point, but you know, I don't see too many wins, unfortunately. I'm just hoping, as we were talking about earlier, the eye test. I want to see with my eyes that we are progressing, that we are improving, that we are getting back to how things were years ago, and we could put a lot of this behind us, keep on moving forward with Kevin and Andrew, get these 2 first-round picks next year, maybe in the top 10, and be in a good spot. And after this season, putting number 4 behind us, completely cleaning the slate, and being completely done, moving on, and looking pretty good with things.
Yeah, even though that dark cloud's lingering, if you listened to anything last week, Anthony, you know that there's an outside chance we may see him this season. If he does, I'm not gonna be a happy camper. I know you won't be either.
After what Jimmy had said, handful of months ago, I said then like there's no way he could suit up for this. So I would be thoroughly well, and then Haslam went to his wedding. So I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, he went to
It's
his
just a
wedding,
crazy
and
part.
then they felt encouraged by his workout. So it's like, what's really going on? It's like, I listen. He's going to be on the team next year too, probably just because of the cap ramifications. So we might as well just kind of just buckle up and unfortunately have to deal with it.
Or if they throw him out, there's once we're like tanking, get to that point, and then that's
Yep, I guess so. We'll see.
all right. We're gonna get on out of here. We'll be back with the game preview with Browns and Bengals. Over that, and I would imagine Sunday night or Monday we will have post game reaction from opening day game between the Browns and the Bengals. Really excited for that. Looking forward to getting back into this podcasting after all of these issues that have been going on. A little sense of normalcy over here. So obviously great to talk to you, Jack. Obviously great to talk to everybody watching and listening wherever you podcast. Greatly appreciate it. Be sure to give Jack a follow at Jack McCurry08 over on X. Give me a follow at Anthony Joki. Be sure to give the Dawgland a follow as well on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, X, Facebook, wherever you TikTok as well. We are on there too. So until next time, always remember, go Browns.
Go Browns.